enrolled programs is we're full. So in fact, we're at the point at our career and tech centers, if we want to start new programs, we've essentially got to phase out another program to find space for it. So at the tech centers, no vacancy, we're full. But what I would tell you is, of course, our tech centers are near component school districts at each, so we could certainly look at something with busing where the students are dropped off at one location, either the BOCES or a larger school district that's nearby. But there is, the point being, there is a lot of space out in the component districts that can be utilized. Great question. Yes?
Schools would be because you don't have enough revenue to support them separately. Then you said, but school district spending goes up. So it seems that those two facts kind of counter each other. Why would you even want to do it if your spending's going to go up?
The 2010 study actually demonstrated that if you went to 6 regional high schools, that you would show a savings. The savings, as I recall, was not significant. However, this is what I want to go back to, the programmatic enhancements were. So I think, you know, really to address the root cause of your question, even before the financial crisis really set in, all of the superintendents in the region recognized, and we talked about this together, that it was really an enrollment problem, okay? For example, and I know Joe Kardash is here, so I'm just going to pick on Colton-Pierpont. If you graduate, you know, 25 students a year, in a given year, you might have 3 students that could enroll in physics. So it really was a secondary school, the fact that with our enrollment sizes, you just can't offer consistently year to year a comprehensive high school program when you're doing that. And back to your original question, it's not cost effective. You know, when you break it down by unit, how much is it costing you to have a veteran physics teacher teach one class with 3 bodies in it? It's just not efficient.
Thank you, Tom.
Great,
That's great.
Can I ask one more question? Short of formal consolidation and mergering, are the school districts looking at specialized services? I mean, I think one of the challenges we're hearing in the financial discussions, if things continue, for example, AP and honors courses are on the block. Foreign language offerings are on the block. Is there some discussion occurring between the districts that a district would, for example, employ the Spanish language teachers and another district would employ the French language teachers? God forbid somebody actually employ an English teacher. But the idea being that, you know, mornings in Colton-Pierpont, it'll be French. Afternoons, the French teacher goes to Potsdam, and the Spanish teacher from Potsdam goes to Colton-Pierpont. So there's a way to, same thing maybe with AP courses, where a teacher might teach one session of that, but that could be a shared resource between the districts. Anything like that to kind of keep the quality aspect still in play and give the students a bit of a chance while the rest of this shakes out, as opposed to each district being on its own.
Yeah, so the question is, in terms of our district sharing, even on an individual course basis, and having those types of conversations, they are definitely having those conversations, and we have had for the last several years. Although you do bring up a point where we could certainly use some more legislation. The example I'll give you is in section 1950 of the Ed Law, BOCES we can provide shared teachers, but not in the core academic areas. So art, phys ed, health, et cetera. But the very quandary that you mentioned, we can't provide science, English, core academics. If we could do that, and that would be a very easy tweak to section 1950, then you could have 2 smaller rural schools do that. And it also addresses the problem I mentioned earlier, where state aid isn't distributed fairly through the foundation aid model. So for poor rural school districts, BOCES aid is a way that they can kind of get even, so to speak. So if you allowed small rural districts to share and utilize that BOCES aid, Again, it's going to drive more state aid away from wealthier areas and to North Country districts where they could share those things. So there are some legal impediments.
Thank you, Tom. The questions are really helpful because I believe that for those who aren't asking the questions, when others do ask the questions, it reminds us, oh yeah, I really wanted to ask something like that myself, and it's actually quite useful information. Okay, so the next person who is speaking, if you look at your program, is Phil Martin, Education Consultant. I'll just say quickly that Phil Martin is far more than an education consultant. This is a man who spent a lifetime in education, a superintendent, and then upon retirement actually went into working as a consultant to work with districts on consolidation and other kinds of merger ideas. It's a pleasure to have Phil Martin here to talk about the study.
Thank you, and I truly appreciate the invitation to participate in this symposium for two reasons. First, I am very pleased to Sure. I'm very pleased to represent the districts of Hermon-Dekalb, Heuvelton, and Morristown in the study of regional high schools. And secondly, I always find that I learn a great deal and have a great number of takeaways from previous presentations, and as I have today, and I just really want to mention some of the important principles that have been mentioned previously, which actually apply or characterize the study that I am currently involved with the three districts. And John's point about recognizing the absolute importance of the relationship of a school with its community is critical in any decision that's made. And the other is the importance of using data to make decisions rather than assumptions and guesses. And that's what this study is about as well. And then from David Acker this morning, I also took away, which has already been discussed, the whole notion that silos are barriers to change. And that the second one is that if you're really trying to precipitate change, then you really do need to create, or at least it's helpful to create a sense of urgency. And then lastly, that the job of leaders is to act. And all three, or all five of those points characterize the study that I have had the privilege of being involved with. As you can see, it is a study about regional high schools. And I am going to present to you three different models that we are currently working on with regard to regional high schools, and then compare them to a model of tuitioning and two different models of merger. And I just want to indicate to you that at the outset that this conversation about among these three school districts began 14 months ago with a subcommittee, representatives of the boards of education of these three districts and the superintendents, I'm sure as a result of the study that Tom mentioned by the rural schools on regional high schools. And rather than continuing to just discuss and converse and speculate and wonder as to whether a regional high school could in fact be put into place, then in order to, the whole concept that in order to get a concept off the ground, you really have to start on the ground. So this study and this conversation and analysis that we have been involved with really does focus on developing working models of regional high schools, and then comparing those with models for merger and for tuitioning. And just take a brief moment to commend these three districts, their three superintendents, Ann, Susan, and Dave, and the board members who have been involved with this. Commend them for having the energy and the perseverance and the drive to actually conduct a study. I became involved in the study in the middle of December, and am helping them through the study, and our projected timeline is to finish this by the end of June. In any kind of study of this nature, there are several critical dimensions. One of them is location. One is curriculum opportunity, staffing, transportation. and certainly the budget and finance. So let me set the stage for this. From the outset of the study, Heuvelton has been the intended location for a regional high school. And these are the three districts. I've outlined them in red. This is Morristown over here, and then Heuvelton in the center, and then Hermon-Dekalb over here. And as you can see, Heuvelton is between the other two, so from a standpoint of location, it is an appropriate location for a regional or high school or any kind of consolidation, whether it's regional high school merger or tuitioning. And from a standpoint here, this is a school in Hermon-Dekalb. It's almost a straight line to the Heuvelton school. It's a little over 12 miles, about a 15-minute ride. And from Morristown, however, you must travel on Route 37 to Ogdensburg and then down 812 to Morristown for about a 25-minute ride. The second reason that Heuvelton makes sense for this possible regionalization or regional high school is that it does have space. So from that standpoint, we address the issue of space. And before I forget to mention it, with any kind of change, we always know that there are going to be positives and some negatives. And one of the negatives is already apparent, that it will be a longer bus ride. If there were any kind of consolidation at Heuvelton among the three districts, then certainly students from Hermon-Dekalb are going to have a longer bus ride, and students from Morristown will have a longer bus ride. So let me set the stage for how we have conducted the study. After determining that Heuvelton would be the site, our next step was to then try to determine the number of class sections for every single course, grades 7 through 12, English 7 to English 12, Math 7 to Math 12, art, music, physical education, and so forth. So after we had completed that analysis, and clearly there is an economy of scale involved, and clearly the benefit here is from a staffing standpoint in terms of budgeting and finance, that we found that after this analysis, comparing the number of teachers that would be required to conduct a program for grades 7 through 12, and I forgot to mention this, we are looking at 7 through 12, even though as you see the models later on the screen, are going to show 7 through 12 or 9 through 12 or even 11 through 12, since it would be possible for Heuvelton, the Heuvelton building, to not only accommodate its own K through 6 program, it would also has the space to accommodate a 7 through 12 program of consolidating the 7-12 populations of all three districts on one site. So based upon the number of sections that would be required for each subject or each class, we found that indeed it would we would have a sizable savings of staff. Right now, there in total, in combination, the number of teachers in grades 7 through 12 among the three districts is 50.5, and that if we were to consolidate, or if the districts were to consolidate their populations, then the number of teachers that would be required to provide a comprehensive academic program for the consolidated populations would be 38, so that there would be a sizable reduction in teaching staff from 50.5 to 38, which is a positive from the standpoint of finance, but it's the other negative. And then we're now having to eliminate positions for teachers. And not only would teaching positions be eliminated, but there would be elimination of some administrative positions, as well as secretarial and custodial. So that's the negative of the thing. But from trying to determine, and as pointed out from Senator Flanagan's bill, to leverage resources and to try to prepare students for a global economy, then combining these three populations together on one site for two basic reasons. Number one is that right now the grade sizes, I think Tom made some reference already, the grade sizes in one of the districts, there's a class of 17. On the other end of the spectrum, there's a class of 50 on one of the schools. And right now, most English classes or math or whatever subject it may be have 1 or 2 sections total in the school building, and some of them are evenly balanced and some are not evenly balanced. There's a case where there's one English 12 class of 26 and another one of 6, so they're out of balance. If they were all educated on the same site, then we have determined that it would only require 5 different sections of English 7 and English and Math 7 and all the way through the entire spectrum from 7th grade to 12th grade. And by the mere fact that there would be 5 sections allows, instead of 1 or 2 in a building, there's a much better ability to differentiate instruction and provide differentiation of course content based upon ability and allow, even in 7th grade, to have courses that are sections that are more oriented toward higher ability students and as well as students that are struggling. At the upper levels, clearly be able to have in English electives in Shakespeare, creative writing, journalism, or in the sciences of environmental science, astronomy, and anatomy and physiology. All of those are benefits in addition to the fact with 5 sections at every level, 7th grade to 12th grade, you can run honors levels, AP courses, and so forth. There's a tremendous benefit, particularly when we're trying to prepare students for a global economy. So I mentioned the fact that we are able to enhance the curriculum, which has been the focus, the curriculum office, or offerings, which really has been the focus of these 3 school districts in this process. It's obviously there's a tremendous financial crush that we're all experiencing, but their focus is to try to deal with this to not only sustain the viability and the efficacy of their programs, but also to enhance them. So let me now describe the different models that we're engaged in. Before I do that, well, put the first one up. The first 3 that I'm going to describe are variations of regional high schools. And there are 3 different models that we're working on. Again, I want to emphasize the point of working models. This first one creates and establishes a regional high school as its unto itself, with its own, it would become its own school district, with its own Board of Education, and its own superintendent, and all of the collateral trappings that go with having another school district. Now, again, to emphasize, all of these models, or all of these programs that we're discussing, are all taking place at the Heuvelton building. And in this case, since this would be, in this case, there would be actually 2 different legal entities operating in the Heuvelton building. One would be the current Heuvelton School District, and the other one would be the regional high school with its own Board of Education, which would lease space from Heuvelton to operate there. So that it would not be the Heuvelton Regional High School, it would have some other more generic name. I'll just use the term Alliance. It could be the Alliance Regional High School located in the Heuvelton building, leasing the space from Heuvelton. In all 6 models that we're going to present here, I just want to emphasize once that all of them have the identical instructional and curricular program, with all have 38 teachers, are all the same. So it's an identical program for all of these.